Today I effed up by thinking a woman was a boy and groping her chest. Obligatory. This happened a little over a year ago, and throwaway because I don't want people on my main account to know what I do for a living. So, I work for the TSA and have for a few years now. It's a good job overall. I'm underpaid, but the benefits are nice, and I get overtime when I want it. A little over a year ago, during the week leading up to Christmas, we had bad weather that delayed all the flights. I volunteered to stay late so that my coworkers could go home to their families. Most of the work was done anyway, so it was mostly just standing around waiting for the odd latecomer. I was working the space tube thingy, when 3 passengers came up together, a middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a teenage boy. I figure it's a family traveling together for the holidays and going about my work. Mom goes through it, and all is fine. Dad goes through it, and all is fine. A kid comes up, I get a good look at him. Hoodie, sweatpants, shortish hair, smooth face. I figure he's about 13, maybe 14. I hit the button, directed him to wait with me for a moment, and then gestured to the screen, which lit up on his chest area. I tell him that I have to pat that area down. He's a little nervous. I figure that because he's so young, this is probably his first time getting a pat down, but he says okay, and I start the pat down. I do the left side of the chest and feel some moob, which catches me off guard because he didn't look chubby at all. I move to the right side of the chest, read what's on the hoodie, and it all clicks at once. The hoodie has the name of the local college on it. This is an adult, not a child. He's not wearing sweatpants, she is wearing yoga pants. She doesn't even know the couple that just came through. I look at her face, which is bright red, my hand is still on her chest, and I pull it back like I just got bit by a snake. I immediately called for my supervisor, who came over and asked what was wrong, and I explained the situation to her. My supervisor covered her mouth, and at first, I thought she was mortified, but then I realized she was trying not to laugh. She takes a minute to pull herself together, tells me to go take a break, and finishes screening the passenger herself. Once that was done, I apologized to the passenger. She told me it was okay, that it wasn't the first time she was mistaken for a boy, and that she probably should have said something before I started touching her. I leave her alone and go talk to my supervisor to figure out exactly how fired I am. She told me to calm down, that it was just an honest mistake, and that she had my back if the passenger filed an official complaint, but that probably wouldn't happen, and I shouldn't be worried. That reassured me a little, but I still groped a woman and ruined Christmas, so I feel like an absolute monster. I swallow my shame and finish my shift, then I go into the airport proper to find some food because I just finished a 12-hour shift and there's no way I have the energy to cook dinner. I saw my hapless victim sitting at her gate, waiting for her flight. I went up to her to apologize again, and saw that the flight had been delayed until morning. It was about 11 at night. I apologize again, she says it's fine, and I ask her if she's planning to stay the whole night. She says she has too, all the hotels in the area are booked. I tell her that I'm getting some dinner, and offer to get her some food as well. After all, I already got to second base, so I think it's only fair that I buy her dinner. She agrees, and we go to one of the restaurants that is open late, get some food, and start eating. She said she gets mistaken for a boy a lot, and it's not a big deal. I told her about how I had long hair and no beard in college, and at the gym people would frequently walk into the men's bathroom, see me, and do a double take to make sure they didn't walk into the ladies' room. She laughed, and we ended up talking for a few hours, before I finally told her that I had to get home, and apologized again for the accidental touching. She said that all is forgiven, if I promise to take her on a real date when she gets back. I agreed. She gave me her phone number, and I went home, and immediately started texting her. We kept talking until her flight finally left, and when she got back I picked her up at the airport, and a few days later took her on that date that I promised her. We just celebrated our first anniversary. She has long hair now. A neighbor hit my car and lied about it, so I ruined 300 pounds of meat while he was on vacation. Part 3. You freeze a cup of water, then place a penny on top of it and stick it in your freezer. If your power goes out, the water will eventually melt and the penny will fall to the bottom of the cup. If you return home and the penny is at the bottom of the cup, your freezer was off for an extended period, and now everything in it has potentially defrosted and become unfit for consumption. I immediately got up and ran back to Chester's garage to scope out the legitimacy of my nefarious deed. As luck would have it, Chester's circuit breaker was hidden behind a tool shelf, not directly visible to the naked eye. Who would put a shelf in front of a circuit breaker? Chester, of course. So I promptly took the cup out of the freezer and sat it on Chester's porch to let it get a little sun. After a few hours, the ice had melted enough that the penny slipped right to the bottom of the cup. I then put the cup back in the freezer, being very careful to position it exactly where it was when I took it out, before moving on to the last phase of my insidious plan. I started blowing up Chester's phone with calls and frantic text messages. Chester, where is your circuit breaker? I can't find it and your power is off. Get back to me, ASAP. I did this countless times over the next 2 days before I finally got a call back from Chester. He told me immediately where to go in his garage to find the circuit breaker, which of course I already knew thanks to my prior detective work. I set the phone down and flipped the circuit breaker twice. Once to turn it off and then a second time to turn it back on, giving it just enough time to mess with the digital clocks on all his appliances. And with that, my revenge was complete. All that was left was for Chester to come back home, which took another 2 days. When Chester got back home I was nervous, but eager to see if my charade had worked. The next day I got a knock on my door. It was Chester. He asked me if I wanted some meat to give to my dogs. The power had been off for too long and all the meat in his freezers had thawed out while he was gone, so he was throwing it out. I asked him how much he had, and he said it was probably somewhere close to 300 pounds. He didn't want to waste it all, so he asked if I wanted to give some to my dogs. I, graciously, helped myself to roughly half a freezer's worth of meat, some of which I stored in my fridge, and the rest Chester was nice enough to offer to hold onto in his freezer until I needed it. The kicker is that Chester had no idea the meat never actually defrosted, and was still perfectly good. That night I helped myself and my dogs to a couple of nice steaks, courtesy of old Chester himself, who was still busy walking the neighborhood unloading the tainted meat on anyone who had a cat or dog that might want it. It was at least 4 or 5 months before me and my dogs went through all the meat Chester had given us. I don't know if I made all my money back for the repairs on my car, but I didn't have to buy any meat for many a fortnight. Am I the a-hole for ditching my assigned bridesmaid at a wedding for one that is younger and a different race as me? I ended up leaving the wedding early. One of my good friends from college was getting married, call him Tom, to his wife, call her Liz, and asked me to be one of his groomsmen. I was honored. I haven't seen him in a while because I live across the country. When I arrived in his city, I was assigned a bridesmaid called Kelly. Now Kelly is a lovely woman. However, I think we were only assigned to each other because we are both black. Liz started telling me that we were both single and perfect for each other, but there was nothing to indicate that at all besides us both being black. I should add as well that Liz had a lot more bridesmaids than Tom had as groomsmen. The first night the entire wedding party went out and it became clear that Kelly wanted to hook up. I was not into her at all, so I kindly turned her down. She then starts interrogating me as to why. I try to give a generic answer, but she starts listing off all of the reasons why we are so perfect together. I end up saying that I don't do the whole short-term type thing, and as we both live in completely different states there is no future here. She ends up cooling off but then tells me that she respects me more for that and that I am a stand-up guy and the type of guy that she is looking for. During the rest of the time we are there, one of the other unmatched bridesmaids, call her Jen, starts messaging me privately and we hit it off. The next day's wedding ceremony went well, we had the reception, and in Kelly I did our entrance together and then danced together for a bit. After a bit, I go to the bar, and Jen and I start to dance. At this point, Kelly is giving me dirty looks. I just ignore it and continue having a good time. All is going well until when I am at the bar, Kelly and Liz confront me and start saying that my dancing with Jen is inappropriate. They started saying she was too young for me and that it looked creepy. For what it's worth, I am 32 and she is 24 and about to turn 25. I am like, oh, it's okay, me and Jen are just friends. Liz at this point is angry with me and starts saying that Jen is in college, she is doing her master's, and that this is her wedding and she doesn't want to see that. Then Kelly starts saying that I must have a fetish for white women. At this point, I realize that there is no logical argument I can make. I told Kelly and Liz that I enjoyed the wedding but I needed to go to bed early for my flight the next day. I leave and go up to my hotel. 15 minutes later Jen leaves early. 5 minutes after Jen came up, we both got kicked out of the wedding party chat. I later find out from Tom that Kelly was crying her eyes out. And that it messed up the night for Liz as well. He told me that he wasn't mad at me because he told Liz from the start that Kelly wasn't going to be my type, but instead, Liz wanted to set Kelly up. At this point, I feel terrible that I made it so Liz was not able to enjoy her special night. As for Kelly, I just wish she got no means no.